Thousands killed, millions displaced, frequent bombings and ground fighting across the country. This is daily life in Yemen. The country is embroiled in a year-long war over a fight for political stability. The United Nations is taking a renewed interest in the conflict. For the latest, let's go to CCTV's Liling. She joins us from UN headquarters in New York. And Liling, two of the parties to the conflict, Saudi Arabia and Yemen's Houthi rebels, have begun direct peace talks. What do we know about how those talks are progressing?
Yes, Anand, we have seen reports that a delegation from the Houthi rebels in Yemen have been in Riyadh this week, meeting with Saudi officials on Yemen. Now, we understand these are not formal negotiations towards resolving the conflict just yet, but because of some headway made, it is seen as perhaps paving the way for more formal peace talks further down the road. Now, one of the key topics discussed during these meetings between both sides was a prisoner swap, and we already saw that happening. Yemen has released a Saudi lieutenant that had been captured in exchange for 7 Yemeni prisoners held by the kingdom. Now, the talks have also opened the way for a period of calm that has allowed the delivery of humanitarian supplies and medical aid across the Saudi-Yemeni border into northern Yemen. So that has been a progress on the humanitarian front. Now, another interesting development that we saw this week is that it appears Houthi rebels are trying to distance themselves from their Iranian backers, apparently rejecting an offer from Tehran for military advisors. Now, in a Facebook post, a senior Houthi official, Youssef El-Feshi, wrote that Iran should stay silent and out of the Yemeni conflict. Now, at least one Saudi official has regarded that comment as a positive step, but broadly speaking, the process, the talks that we've seen this week have been regarded as a positive step. These are not formal negotiations just yet, but they do open the way for further negotiations, and Saudi officials have said that any formal talks will have to take place under the auspices of the United Nations.
Right, and talking about the United Nations, Liling, one of the UN reports tells us that almost a year after the conflict in Yemen, more than 2.4 million people have been forcibly displaced by the fighting. How is the international community responding to that?
Well, the international community response on the humanitarian front has been somewhat slow. Well, we've been seeing a lot of pressure and concern from countries around the world over the escalating situation in Yemen, the threat to regional stability, and the threat of also increasing enmity between the longtime allies, longtime foes rather, Saudi Arabia and Iran. The humanitarian response has been trickling in terms of funding. Now, this year, a month ago, actually in February, the UN launched an appeal for $1.8 billion, a humanitarian response for Yemen. So far, it has only been funded by 2%. Granted, it has only been about a month, but in 2015, the appeal for $1.6 billion for the humanitarian response was only met by 56%. So the response, the funding gap is still very wide, and the UN is appealing for more help in order to provide medical supplies, food supplies, humanitarian aid to more than 3 million Yemenis in need.
Okay, thanks, Liling. That's CCTV's Liling reporting from the UN.